Hi, welcome to Now TV Canada, and I am Just Jen YouTube channel. If you don't already know, I am Just Jen. Why did I call it that? Because what is the most popular question most people get asked when they meet somebody new? What do you like to be called? Jen, Jenny, Jennifer, and how do you like to spell your name? Jennifer was, and still is, a very popular name, but at some point it was like the third most popular female name in the world. Even doing those names that they use in the Middle East areas and Africa areas where they just use them over and over and over again. At one point, it was the third most popular female name in the world. I was in a grade 5. There was 5 Jennifers, and the teacher had to go by our last name initials to call on us. It's kind of like my stream of thought with the Charlie Baker movie where I play the new Mrs. Baker, who's also going on tour with a book deal. And then we all got to go to the hospital for whatever reason. His dad, his wife, the new couple, because this would be like Charlie's multiple attempts at marriage. He's not getting it right like his parents were, one wife, one husband, 12 kids later. But we're in the doctor's office and they're like, Mrs. Baker, and everybody says, which one? So that's sort of the point of the channel that I'm just in, where I'm like, okay, Jen is good. Let's not get complicated, right? Just keep it simple. You can just call me Jen. Jen is good. I'm good with Jen. However, it's okay if you still want to call me Jennifer. That's fine too. But you don't have to go, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. We're not in a dumb sub situation here. Just greetings. So that is why it's called I Am Just Jen. I came up with Now TV a little after that, flipping around on Oprah with the own thing. Wasn't to me, it's not who I am. I like to think of myself as humble and meek, modest. I'm not into materialism. I don't need to be lavish with what I have. So today we're going to talk about crime. Around my Bible 101s, and let's talk about Tom Welling because he plays Superman. And Superman is a focus of superheroes that we need in our lives. It's not just him, but others. But it sort of all still ties together. So today's episode is about crime. I don't know how much I'm going to get shared. I will list all the scriptures below this video. Since it took me a long time just to organize what I want to share in the videos and folders. So I'm going to go to my pictures here. We're going to start with a guy in Surrey, BC here. See if I can read his name. Mukhtar Pangali and the previous wife of 9 years, Manjit Pangali, who strangled his wife and then set her body on fire. Then he lied about her going missing, left the 4-year-old daughter they had together home alone, and then took the body and went and dumped it somewhere. They found it 5 days later in Delta. At some point, I guess the confession comes out, or this is just enough proof that he murdered his wife, who was 4 months pregnant with the second child. And throughout later investigations, it turns out he had said he premeditated it. Basically, he had dreamed about it for 11 months or something like that. Then he premeditated how to do it, and then he actually followed through on it. So they sentenced him to second-degree murder. And they sentenced him to life in prison. So this is the now dead wife who was 4 months pregnant, who was a high school teacher, BC school teacher, and the guy that did it. And the reason I'm sharing this is because my problem with the Canadian and the British legal system is I feel like this about everything. Because they've released that man. He was given full parole in 2023 on a life sentence of only second-degree murder, even though he killed 2 people. Her and the unborn child who was at 4 months along. That's after abortion freedom. There was a fully formed human in her belly. He's walking the streets and he's not wearing the shaming policy sign that Boston once had where people can see what he's doing. He's actually been hired, was given a job, and is working and living in society. When you strangle somebody and then burn their body, you don't deserve to live. And when there's another body inside that body, you deserve to be hanged or sent to America, to the Texas prison system where they have the death penalty. And then you take that handle and you go ka-ching, or use that needle and you shove it in there and you send them down to hell where they belong. If anybody actually thinks that God is so forgiving that it's okay to be kind and be compassionate and let's give somebody a second chance for committing crimes like that, they don't know God. They're crazy. And to think that there isn't a God because I do good things and that I would live in the same society where somebody does bad things like that, and that it's the same thing to be in the same society as if it's just chance. Right? So we need to start sending the death penalty people to death prisons and actually go follow through with death sentences. How many how many sentences that are lifelong that should be death is beyond me based on the kindness of Britain and Canadian politics or laws. We are failing women and children. We're just failing across the board with all the crime and all the re-releasing of criminals into prisons. If our prisons are overflowing, build bigger prisons. Make better treatment centers. Come up with better programs. Use the Holy Scriptures. Use prayer. Pray to God. Don't actually say higher power. Put a name to it because he's there. If you have the ability to ask God for help, you reach him halfway. He will reach you the other half, right? Meet me halfway and he'll be there waiting. People don't ask him for help often enough, even though he's there for the help. But you cannot strangle a pregnant woman of 4 months and then burn her body, dump it, then lie about it. And all of this was premeditated and get out of jail. It's not okay. And then have a secret life where he can be employed and nobody knows about it. It's not enough to say, oh, you can't have relationships, you can't use drugs or alcohol, and you'll just be monitored for life. He needs to be in a Texas prison where his life should have already been taken for the 2 lives that he took. This leads to Sarah Sharif. This is the reason I did my package on eBay with all that stuff for sale, because at the time, the court case for Sarah Sharif in Surrey, United Kingdom, was in trial, was in process. And I was reading about her injuries and losing my mind. So, where did I put her pictures? Maybe I didn't send. Okay, anyways. Hang on. I got it. She's in my phone, and I just got to find the link. I thought I downloaded them onto my phone, but I didn't. My phone gets full. My computers get full. I swap from one computer to the other. It's crazy. Okay. So, Sarah Sharif, the story about it was, it's a campaign of abuse. Just trying to find the pictures. Sharif, pictures. Murder. 10 years old. She was tortured until days before. Like, until there was no life left in her. They said there was a video of the days leading up to her death where even with the fractures in her body, she was still up, walking around, trying to act like she was okay dancing. So she was around 6 years old when it started, and her hair is starting to thin. She was looking like this as a little girl. And she was put in a situation where she was sort of coerced into telling everybody that it was her biological mom that was abusive. Now, apparently there were issues right from the pregnancy of concern with this whole family. And then the first 2 years, she was in and out of foster care while people were fighting for who would get custody. And in the end, thanks to an inexperienced social worker and the judge that finalized that, she was granted custody to the actual biological father. Now, 99% of the time, children should be with the mother because they're the nurturers. Now, I'm not saying there aren't good single dads, but there needs to be pretty good reason for why the kid's not with the mom. Or at least if you've got 4 kids, split it 2 and 2, whatever, share the responsibilities and everybody's happy with that. So that's what she looked like at the end of her life. She didn't actually practice it, but they covered her up in the hijabs towards the end to cover up all the bruising on her bodies because it got so extensive and bad. And they were claiming she was possessed, that there was something wrong with her inside of her. But no little kid with eyes like that, no little kid this young or like that would know anything about that kind of evil outside of what they're presenting to her in the environment she's supposed to feel most safe and protected in. So she had 11 fractures on her body and a head injury, extensively over 100 body injuries and 70 fresh ones. She had burn marks from an iron and marks beaten from a like cricket bat or something, and bite marks and things that the father actually denied he was the one to do. And the uncle only got 16 years for turning his back and, ignoring that it's happening. And his DNA was also on the weapons. All 3 of them were on the weapons that were found when she died. And the mother-in-law, the stepmom, wouldn't even give her teeth imprints. So it's a dead given that she was part of the campaign of abuse towards the child. Originally, the father lied and said, I testified it was me to cover up the stepwife's issues. But like attracts like. And so if she was thinking this kid had something wrong with her, then there's something wrong with her, not the child. And so it was the 2 of them. It was 2:47 a.m. on August 10th last year when Surrey police received a call from Islamabad airport in Pakistan. "I've killed my daughter," said the man on the end of the phone, sobbing loudly. "It wasn't my intention to kill her, but I beat her up too much." He told the police, call handler, he had only meant to punish her. "I'm a cruel father," he added. He actually declared that he legally beat his daughter. So they actually believe they have the right to legally beat women and children. That it's their right to do that. He's just saying that he went too far because she died. But that's what happens when you beat somebody wrongfully. Eventually, the body tires out and it gives up the ghost. Eventually, they sustain so much injury, and without going to hospital and getting care, you don't recover from it, you die. The man on the phone was Irfan Sharif. By the time the call was over, PC George van der Wart was knocking on the door of the Sharif family home in Woking, Surrey, the UK. In a bedroom at the top of the stairs, he found the body of Sarah Sharif, 10 years old, on the bottom bunk under covers. Next to the pillow was a note in Sharif's handwriting in which he said he had beaten and killed his daughter. "I lost it," he wrote. Post-mortem examination showed Sarah had died from a constellation of injuries and neglect. Her body was covered in bruises. She had a traumatic head injury, human bite marks, and multiple broken bones. She had been burned by a domestic iron. A search of the house and garden revealed, among other things, homemade hoods made of plastic bags and packing tape, as well as a cricket bat with Sarah's blood on it. It was a brutal end to the life of a girl remembered by her former class teacher as spirited, sassy, bubbly, and whose happy place was being on the stage. Sarah had loved playing the guitar and dreamed of being on the X Factor. Her favorite color was pink, and her favorite food was chicken biryani, beaten, burned, and bitten. And Old Bailey jury has now found Sharif and Sarah's stepmother, Banash Batul, guilty of murder. Her uncle, Faisal Malik, was cleared of the murder, but found guilty of causing or allowing the death of a child and sentenced to 16 years. During the 8-week trial, a picture was painted of a young girl who was let down by those closest to her, the people she should have been able to trust. Sarah was often pictured smiling in photographs, yet at home she was being beaten, burned, and bitten. The trial would show again and again how Surrey County Council's Children's Services, Surrey Police, and her primary school were all aware of concerns about her family, but none was able to offer a lifeline to Sarah. Now, following a legal case brought to by BBC News and other media, we can report much more detail of the involvement of the council and the family courts in Sarah's life. A girl who was in foster care twice by the age of 3, Sarah was surrounded by violence for all of her short life. She grew up in a household where a culture of violence was normalized, the prosecutor told the court. Sarah Sharif was born on January 11th, 2013, in Wexham Park Hospital in Slough. Her father had come to the UK from Pakistan to study. He married Sarah's mother, Olga Domin, who was Polish and spoke little English. In Woking, 2009, but before Sarah was even born, the family was known to police and children's services. Records show police were involved 4 times from 2010 to 2012. Surrey County Council Children's Services were in contact from 2010, while hearings at the family court in Surrey began just before Sarah was born. This was because of growing concerns of neglect and violence in the family, including against one of Sarah's siblings referred to in court as Z. In 2010, Z was found alone in a shop, aged just 3. Later that year, Sharif was arrested for assaulting Miss Domin. During the fight, he hit Z, leaving a handprint on the child's back. 2011, Z told teachers, "Daddy hit me," and the following year told them, "Mommy hit me." The child was found with a burn mark and was again discovered alone in public, this time in Woking Town Centre, half a mile from the family home. Social workers recorded unexplained injuries to Z and another of Sarah's siblings referred to in court as U. Before Sarah was born, there were further allegations of assault against the children. All were denied. Then there was an incident in 2013 when Z was burned by iron. When social workers visited their home, they found no light bulbs or bedding in the children's bedrooms. This meant Sarah was under a care order. Soon after she was born, he gave the local authority legal responsibility for Sarah and her 2 siblings, and social workers made frequent visits to the family home. She was first taken into foster care for a short period in November 2014 when she was almost 2, after Z complained of being bitten very hard by Miss Domin and pinched and punched by Sharif. Foster carers noticed what looked like cigarette burns on both Sarah and U. Miss Domin and Sharif said they were chicken pox scars. In 2015, in the middle of the care proceedings hearing, Miss Domin accused Sharif of hitting her and their children and of controlling and violent behavior. These allegations were never tested in court, but Sharif agreed to go on domestic violence course. False imprisonment. Surrey police were also aware of previous allegations of violence made against Sharif. 2 ex-girlfriends accused him of false imprisonment in 2007 and 2009. After initial period in foster care in late 2014, Sarah, who had still not yet turned 2, returned home with you. However, Z never went back to the family, instead remaining in care. The following year, Sarah was briefly in foster care again, this time when her mother left the family home, alleging domestic violence. When her parents formally separated, she started living with her mother, first at a women's refuge. Sharif was only allowed supervised contact. She was with her mom from 2015 to 2019. During her murder trial, the jury heard from one of the social workers involved with Sarah's case. In his notes, he recorded that when Sharif went over to Sarah during one session, she shouted at him, "Go away." He also noted that you said Sharif hit Mummy in the mouth and made her bleed. Before Sharif split up with Sarah's mother, he met another woman, Banash Patul, who was a customer at his taxi business. For the next few years, Sarah stayed living with her mother and things seemed to have calmed down. But in Easter 2019, Sharif said Sarah had told him Miss Domain had been violent to her. Family court documents recorded how Sarah said her mother had tried to drown her and burn her with a lighter. She also said her mother had slapped her, pinched her, and pulled her hair. Sharif recorded some of the allegations in a video. For the second time since Sarah was born, social services became involved. This time in assessing who she should live with, despite Sharif's previous history of violence, a social worker recommended that Sarah and you should move back in with him. There's already so much there that this is insane. Z was already pulled out, stayed in care. In October 2019, Guilford's family court agreed that Sarah should return to live with her father and Batul, her new stepmother. This just shows how normalized all of this has become in our countries. This is why America still has prisons that have the death penalty. This is why they have police that go after pedophiles who wave around guns and they pull their guns out and they kill the mother tucker on the spot. Gone. They find their kidnappers. They find their serial killers and they end it. They go to jail if they're still alive and they never see the light of day again. We only do that once in a while. Miss Domain, who consented to the arrangement, was to have contact for 2 hours every Saturday. So the judge had decided to return the child to the father. By this time, Sharif and Batul were living in a small ground floor flat in West Byfleet, and Sarah started going to local St. Mary's primary school. But it was clear to those on the street that all was not well in the house. One upstairs neighbor, Rebecca Spencer, described them as a nightmare family, she told the court. She heard banging and hysterical screaming. On one occasion, when it reached fever pitch, she told jurors she had gone to the address to ask if everything was okay. Patul told her yes, before she had the door shut in my face. Covered in bruises. Another neighbor, Chloe Redwin, told the court she heard frequent smacking and yelling, as well as Patul swearing. She said the only time it was quiet was when they were away on holiday. The court heard none of the neighbors was worried enough to call the police or social services. In December 2020, Batul sent her sister, Kandila Sabu, some pictures of Sarah with obvious serious bruising to her arms and face. Over the next 2 years, so she's already been abused. So in total, it was 4 years. But over the next 2 years, she was on a campaign of abuse. She sent messages to her sister about the beatings and how the child looked between her and him and what to do. So they pulled her out of public school. That would be a red alarm right there. I will do homeschool because it's easier to cover it up. And they don't practice that Muslim stuff, so they just did it to literally plastic bag her head together with tape to seal it in and all the injuries and to cover up the bruises. Homemade plastic bags and tape. Right? You can only crack a skull so many times before it's like literally going to break open from the pieces. It's pretty bad. In one message, she said she had to push Sharif out of the way to save Sarah. Neither Patul nor her sisters called the police or social services. Neither did her brother do anything, and his blood was also on the weapon. So don't tell me he never laid a hand on that child. The teacher recalled Sarah was an absolute chatterbox who dreamed of being on the X Factor. Concerns grew about Sarah in June 2022 when she was taken out of school. It was a cause for concern because it felt very much out of the blue. Sarah returned for the new academic year in September. It was around this time that Sarah started wearing a hijab in a home video in July 2022, which was shown to the jury. Sharif was seen slapping Sarah 4 times on her cheeks. She tried smiling and acting like everything was fine right to the end. You could actually still see a little bruise on her face. It's over there in her cheek area. First, on March 10th, she saw a bruise on the underside of her chin and one on her cheek. They didn't look like fresh bruises, she said. Sarah said she had fallen over on some roller skates, but her account seemed inconsistent. She told one school friend she had fallen off her bike. The school was worried enough that they referred the incident to social services. For the 3rd time, Surrey County Councilors Children's Services became involved in Sarah's case. After a 6-day investigation, the council told the school no further action was being taken, but asked the school to monitor the situation. This was despite the council knowing the long history of allegations of violence in the family and the involvement of the police as far back as 2010. The school also recorded that Batul was seen using very explicit and abusive swear words in Punjabi during the school drop-off, the court heard. On 28th of March, Sarah came to school with another bruise. Batul told Miss Simmons the injury had been caused by a pen. All this was again meticulously recorded by St. Mary's. The following month, the family finally moved out of the tiny 2-bedroom council flat, shared a garden in West Byfleet, to a bigger semi-detached house in Woking, also owned by Surrey County Council. Faisal Malik, Sarah's uncle, has been living with the family for about 4 months at this point, and he also moved into their new house. From this moment, Sarah never went back to school. Sharif wrote a cursory email to St. Mary's saying that his daughter was being homeschooled again. Any chance of the school monitoring Sarah was now over. He beat her up like crazy, is what the neighbors could hear. She often watched Sarah in the garden quietly looking after the baby of the family while the other children played. She seemed to be very attached to the baby, but she never spotted any signs of injury and never heard any shouting or arguing in the house next door. The only thing she noticed was Sarah's demeanor. I didn't see her smile, and I think that is strange. But there was no reason for us to suspect anything. On May 25th, another message about Sarah from Batul to her sister read, he beat her up like crazy. Her oxygen level dropped really low. She's finding it hard to stay awake. She's breathing really, really rapidly. As the summer wore on, largely out of earshot of the neighbors, the torture of Sarah accelerated. In the last few weeks of her life, she was bitten, branded on her bottom with an iron, and hooded with plastic bags held in place by packing tape. Sheriff admitted hitting her with a cricket bat and beating her with a white metal pole that was part of a high chair. He also hit her over her head with a mobile phone, but the bite marks on her body didn't match Sharif's dental impressions, the court was told. He denied burning Sarah with an iron. And they didn't get any more information out of the other people when they gave their testimony. So there was so much missing information and lies in there from the 3 people all convicted. It's sickening. So this is the weapons that were found. And all 3 of them convicted had their blood with her DNA on these weapons. Sarah had started vomiting and was wearing a nappy because she was soiling herself. In those last few weeks, she sustained at least 25 broken bones and a traumatic brain injury. At no point was she ever taken to a hospital. One afternoon in early August, Fiona Mellon, whose back garden overlooked the Sharifs, heard a piercing scream, and that suddenly cut short. On Sunday, 6th of August, 2023, Sarah was filmed at home by Batul dancing in front of the TV, seemingly okay. Later that day, her stepmother's lawyer said her father beat her again. On Tuesday, August 8th, Sarah's body could take no more, and she started to visibly deteriorate. Sharif decided she was pretending and hit her again on her stomach with the metal pole. Later that night, Hugh texted a friend, "Hello, urgent. My sister just passed away." So the other sibling messaged somebody to say that she was gone. When Sarah died, it was the end of a life in which violence had become completely normalized, the prosecution told the trial. Social services had been intermittently involved with the family for 13 years. Her father had been arrested at least 3 times for violence against adults, and her school had raised concerns about bruising. It leaves questions about whether her death could have been avoided. Absolutely. Just like the stories I'm already sharing with you about the kids that are missing and the unsolved murders here in Canada. Absolutely. One key question is whether there should be a better way of monitoring pupils about whom there are concerns when they are taken out of school. Annie Hudson, who chairs the Child Safeguarding Practice Review Panel for England, said vulnerable children can be more at risk when pulled out of school. They are out of sight, they don't have the protective care of being in school, and all that brings, she added. In the immediate aftermath of Sarah's death, Surrey County Council commissioned a rapid review of its involvement with her. This led to a more detailed local child safeguarding review, which is now looking at the roles of Surrey Police, St. Mary's Primary School, NHS, Surrey County. It will investigate the on and off engagement with Sarah by Children's Services, which started before she was born. It's too late to be doing reviews now. And what happens? But the teachers were unable to do anything once Sarah was taken out of the school, right? Okay, I think there's a 47-second clip of Sarah playing guitar. She wanted to learn how to play music. I'm not sure how wanting to play music and dreaming about being on stage warrants beating a child to death in a 2-year campaign of abuse and calling her possessed, which is what the stepmother said. There was some name for it, jinn or something. I don't even know what that is in their culture. So Sarah's death is incredibly distressing, and we share in the profound horror at the terrible details that have emerged during the trial. We cannot begin to comprehend the suffering that poor Sarah endured. A polka dot painted bench now stands in the playground of Sarah's old school. It has a plaque on it which reads Sarah's Buddy Bench. Miss Chambers, the head teacher, said Sarah was such a special little girl, it's hard to put into words, actually. I don't think I've ever known such sadness. That's what you see in her eyes. It is the sadness. I want to show you guys how beautiful she was when they took her into care as a baby. She looked like my daughter, Sarah. Those people should never be allowed parole. And life in prison means 15 to 20 years from now, they can get paroled. 16 years when his blood was on the DNA as the uncle who knew living in the house shouldn't get parole. I want Donald to take these 3 people to Texas. I would like to go whack, 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 and to end their lives. So that's 4 people so far. And the one of them, like I told you, is now out and wandering around here in BC. Britain did the same thing with another guy called Malcolm Farley, who did all these crazy B&Es in people's homes and tied up people and did disgusting things to them and killed people, and eventually got caught, was put in prison, and was told that it was going to be convicted for like 120 years for the death of 26 people, and he was out in less than 20 years. He was given witness protection, like new name, new identity, and just vanished into thin air. We don't actually know if he's actually committed any more crimes. He looked just like Sylvester Stallone. And when I sent him information to be careful at that time about going to England, I don't remember if it was Instagram or email, whatever. He got mad at me, spooked him. So he blocked that account of whatever I did. So that's going to be a sore spot for him in a story because he's good at what he does. He likes the stuff that's the truest to reality. Like The Judge, Tango and Cash, or that movie he did where he owns the security company. But if you want this stuff to stop, then we need to monitor the reports and go in and do something. And all of this context really is relevant to the scriptures and Bible, believing in God and praying. Right? If you have no God, then you have no hope. A crime is not going to be effectively punished just by law itself. Okay, so now the last one. I got to find the picture here. There's one more to go. I'm going to read his name because I have to sing it. Repudiman Singh Malik. Leaves BC Supreme Court with supporters after he was found not guilty in the 1985 bombing of Air India Flight 182 in Vancouver, BC, Wednesday, March 16, 2005, the Canadian Press. Okay. So that guy was released. Like, he was never sentenced. He didn't go to prison over the Air India thing. These are not good people. They're not Christians. They actually think they have the right to break our laws and do whatever they want in any country, anywhere, thinking that it's their right to be able to do that, like Sharif, thinking that it was legally his right to beat women and children. And it's not. I see smiling because he gets off. And how the story goes, I'm going to read it from my other laptop here. One of two hitmen who shot this guy, Repudiman Singh Malik, to death in Surrey, BC in 2022, has been handed a life sentence without parole for 20 years. Again, 20 years. And he's 24 going to prison, and he was like 21 when he committed the crime. So just legally old enough, right, to be an adult. So he's being convicted as an adult. But the victim's family wanted to know who hired the pair of young killers because there was two guys working together. But the guy that was convicted said, I'm not giving you guys that information. He said, sorry, I was young and dumb. I've learned my lesson. I shouldn't have done it. What I'm trying to make a point of here is that he killed a former suspect in the 1985 Air India bombings. Of course he did it. He is clearly guilty of being associated to that 1985 Air India bombing. That is why these young kids were hired to kill him. Right? To get justice, because the courts were not going to give the justice, whether there or over here. And that kind of fighting back and forth never ends. And one of the people in the family went on to say, oh, he's such a powerhouse to us in our community because he's giving money to people and doing things with his money for the neighborhood. Of course, you're buying attention, right? Building a reputation, protecting yourself, getting supporters. And the young boy says, I know nothing I say will bring him back, and I'm sorry for the role I played in this crime. Not a day goes by that I don't feel remorse for my actions, because he had some years to think about it. So he's already been in prison for a few years out of the 20 years he gets sentenced. So he's going to be out by the time he's 48, re-released into society. Now, that might be the only one out of all of these stories where he might not pose any risk of committing another crime like this as a paid hitman. But what happens in the world if crime is not being dealt with right? People are going to take the crime into their own hands and do what they want to solve it. Shot dead outside of his business in July 2022. That was here in Surrey, BC. I want to find the part. That really Okay, so it says pillar. She said her father loved his family unconditionally, was a pillar of the Sikh community, while Dhaliwal addressed Fox directly and urged him to reveal who hired him to erase Malik's legacy. But the boy never relented. The 2 kids that went to prison did not do anything in releasing the name, because that is their safety. That is their guarantee when they do get out of prison. So clearly justice prevailed over the Indian air thingy. But the point is, these people are living here amongst us, innocent people who do nothing, who know nothing about that way of life, that culture, those countries. We're not from there. We have enough crimes here dealing with our own stuff already. What are we supposed to do about this stuff that's outside of our frame of mind, our culture, our way of life, our know-how, when we're dealing with our own struggles within our own communities as Canadians? Right? This is where kindness kills. Now, that kid may not deserve the death penalty, but you decide. Should the other ones be released and given a second chance at life for everything they've done? Over that kid not releasing the name of the people that paid him and his buddy to do this when they were only 21. To bring an end to justice where the courts wouldn't. So I'm going to go back to the Bible here, because I've done this in the videos already. And I'm going to reiterate the true God. I make a point here. The information is always here. Manasseh, king of Judah, the son of Hezekiah, the last good king. And then after that, it was the great-grandson, Josiah, were the last two to conduct these traditional Passovers of the original way that Jehovah God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, liked things being done. So I'm going to read the story of Manasseh, king of Judah, and what God thought of this guy. And maybe you can sort of relate it to the guy that has strangled and burned his pregnant wife and dumped the body, premeditated, who's now free and working, employed here in BC. And he's not wearing a sign, shaming policy-wise, that says what he did. Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 55 years. His mother's name was Hephzibah. He did evil in the eyes of God, Jehovah, following the detestable practices of the nations Jehovah had driven out before the Israelites. He rebuilt the high places his father Hezekiah had destroyed. He also erected altars to Baal and made an Asherah pole, as Ahab, king of Israel, had done. He bowed down to all the starry hosts and worshipped them. He built altars in the temple of Jehovah, of which Jehovah had said, "In Jerusalem I will put my name." In both courts of the temple, of the Lord, he built altars to all the starry hosts. So he went inside of the temple of God and did all this heinous stuff on top of that. He sacrificed his own son in the fire. Are you missing this? Practiced sorcery and divination and consulted mediums and spiritists. He did much evil in the eyes of Jehovah, provoking him to anger. He took the carved Asherah pole he had made and put in the temple of which the Lord had said to David and to his son Solomon, in this temple and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of the tribes of Israel, I will put my name forever. I will not again make the feet of the Israelites wander from the land I gave their forefathers, if only they will be careful to do everything I commanded them and will keep the whole law that my servant Moses gave them. But the people did not listen. Manasseh led them astray, so that they did more evil than the nations the Lord had destroyed before the Israelites. The Lord said through his servants, the prophets, Manasseh, king of Judah, has committed these detestable sins. He has done more evil than the Amorites who preceded him, and has led Judah into sin with his idols. Therefore, this is what Jehovah, the God of Israel, says. I am going to bring such disaster on Jerusalem and Judah that the ears of everyone who hears of it will tingle. I will stretch out over Jerusalem the measuring line used against Samaria and the plume line used against the house of Ahab. I will wipe out Jerusalem as one wipes a dish, wiping it and turning it upside down. I will forsake the remnant of my inheritance and hand them over to their enemies. They will be looted and plundered by all their foes, because they have done evil in my eyes and have provoked me to anger from the day their forefathers came out of Egypt until this day. Moreover, Manasseh also shed so much innocent blood that he filled Jerusalem from end to end, besides the sin that he had caused Judah to commit, so that they did evil in the eyes of Jehovah. Right? So as for the other events, obviously it's been recorded. Manasseh rested his father and was buried in the palace garden. Of course, he wasn't mourned too badly there. I can go on. There's more people like that in the Book of Mormon. It talks about the bloodbath of piles and piles of decomposing dead bodies during heinous events where there's fight and wars going on and people are not armed properly. People have to cover their faces to walk by because the smell is so bad. No burials. Nobody being deserving of it. That was the son of a good man. And now I'm going to talk about the celebration of the Passover from that good man, Hezekiah. Can you believe that's the son of this good man I'm going to read about at the end of this all? But if you don't believe in that part, maybe if I read from the Bible, this is a big book. You can read all of this stuff. It's good for you. My recommendation to Donald Trump and to all of the heads of states is to grab bunches of books like this and New World Translation Bibles and dump those all over the planet where there's wars and contention, strifes, and people doing things wrong, so they can get the message from God again very clearly, because God has removed himself from these situations with his people who are now safe, because we're not in those places and we can't be hurt in those ways. Like, you can't kill Jesus again, right? And you can't claim Jesus as your friend and coming to help you when you are strangling and burning bodies, even still today. Madison Scott, the little black girl in the garbage can. Abigail Andrews was pregnant. She's still missing on that shirt I showed you guys in previous episodes. All the names I still haven't listed off of all the individuals that have been missing from Canada for a long time. I haven't even dealt with the fentanyl epidemic, the drug war, so that they can move into job positions when white people leave, whether they move or retire, and then they just keep hiring themselves, taking the jobs, and then you never see that job position back again. And so eventually they're like, oh, well, we'll just take over America. Well, I'm afraid that God is real, and God had already said, I've got all of this worked out. Uber's of years ahead of everybody. And so that's where we're at and why I'm sharing this stuff. So in the book of James, I'm only going to read chapters 2 and 3. It says, God hath chosen the poor of this world, rich in faith. Salvation gained by keeping the whole law. Faith without works is dead. My brethren, have not the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, with respect of persons, right? God is no respecter of persons in the sense of who does wrong or right, right? If you do right, you get rewarded. If you do wrong, you get punished. For if there come unto your assembly a man with a gold ring and goodly apparel, and there come into you also a poor man in vile raiment, and ye have respect to him that weareth the gay clothing, and say unto him, sit thou here in a good place, and say to the poor, stand thou there, or sit here under my footstool. So I see this happen all the time in churches and throughout society with people all the time. The nicer you're dressed, the more expensive what you're wearing is, the better you're treated by society. And that goes for them as well. But I got to say that there are some places like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints where you can just basically go in if it says welcome and it's open and they're having a meeting and they don't care what you're dressed like. You can sit in the meeting and they'll try to be nice to you, talk to you, and give you information if you're curious to know stuff. The witnesses, albeit they have information that makes all of this perfect for everybody to study, so we have all the answers together at once, they're sort of stiff and they sort of stand there sort of looking trepidated, and people sort of look a little intimidated by communicating with them. But when you go into their meetings, they will tend to look over how you're dressed right away and make a judgment on where you should sit and how to treat you. I've seen it happen. So I prefer the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I don't want a calling in the church, but Joseph keeps trying. He is a real man. He was a prophet in his time. He just didn't have everything God needed him to have at the time, because God is smarter than everybody, and he had to control the information being given to the right people at the right time who are capable of doing what is correct with the responsibility of that knowledge, to stay ahead of the evil, right? To stay ahead of the devil, making sure that the outcome of a better future, instead of World War III or just the end of the world as we know it, doesn't take place. So on with the story. For if there come unto you, and if you have, I'm going on to verse 3, and you have respect to him that weareth the gay clothing, and say unto him, sit there thou in good place, say to the poor, stand thou there, or sit here under my footstool. Are ye not then partial in yourselves, and are become judges of evil thoughts? Hearken, my beloved brethren, hath not God chosen the poor of this world rich in faith, and heirs of the kingdom which he hath promised to them that love him? But ye have despised the poor. Do not rich men oppress you, and draw you before the judgment seats? Do not they blaspheme that worthy name by the which ye are called? If ye fulfill the royal law, according to the scripture, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, ye do well. But if ye have respect to persons, ye commit sin, and are convinced of the law as transgressors. For whosoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all. For he that said, do not commit adultery, said also, do not kill. Now if thou commit no adultery, yet if thou kill, thou art become a transgressor of the law, which means you shouldn't be free on the streets. Shouldn't be breathing. So speak ye and so do, as they that shall be judged by the law of liberty. But only God is the one that can read the hearts of a man. But we can make common sense out of certain crimes to know that God's not thinking, hey, let that guy go and give him a second chance. For he shall have judgment without mercy, that hath shewed no mercy, and mercy rejoiceth against judgment. What doth it profit, my brethren, though a man say he hath faith, and have not works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto them, depart in peace, which happens every day, all the time with the homeless and the poor everywhere, right? Be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding you give them not those things which are needful to the body. What doth it profit? But you don't give any of the things they need, even though you say, be in peace. I try to give as much as I can. Even so, faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone. You have to do things, live by example. Yea, a man, many say, thou hast faith, and I have works. Shew me thy faith without thy works, and I will show thee my faith by my works. Thou believest that there is one God. Thou doest well. The devils also believe and tremble. But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead? Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he had offered Isaac his son upon the altar? Seest thou how faith wrought with him, with his works, and by works was faith made perfect? And the scripture was fulfilled, which saith, Abraham believed God, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness, and he was called the friend of God. We should all be so lucky as to be considered friends with God, but it isn't so. He doesn't love all of us. We are not all friends with God, but I should be so lucky that he talks about me in the Bible around my birth, that he had enough pride to say, I'm going to talk about that in secret. So those of us that know, we know. I will share that stuff. Ye see then how that by works a man is justified, and not by faith only. Likewise also was not Rahab the harlot justified by works, when she had received the messengers and had sent them out another way. For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. The homeless and the poor, the mental health and the drug afflicted people, they have the largest faith and the kindest hearts, the biggest believers. Many people may come from good homes, and you might think they come from troubled homes, but they don't. But there's other things that cause them to end up where they are. Mental health is one of the big problems. They don't end up on drugs until they get sick with very severe conditions that drugs medicate, quiets the mind and the disorder, keeps the holotropic conditioning under control. And then they don't want the families to see them changed into this altered person, because they're no longer the person that is remembered by the family, and they want that to be what they remember, so they stay away from families. And then there's the disconnection of the government systems and the healthcare systems that think they're doing right by telling families, oh, we can't tell you anything about this person, as if that person didn't want to be found or seen by their family, like they had come from some sort of traumatized background. So there's a twofold situation there, because if the person is willing to be reunited with their family, if there is a chance or situation where family love can help a person in need, there should be the right to have the opportunity to do that, not just when an adult says, I don't want to have anything to do with them, whether there's trauma or whether it's because the sickness is at a state where they don't want the family to see it. There should be somewhere in the middle where we could help with that. That would drastically make a difference in all of the tragedy that we're seeing going on out here. It's one of the reasons I'm so convicted to living in this community, because I'm one of these people, minus trauma and poverty. We're going to talk about that, the campaign of abuse. I did show the wheel of abuse. And if it wasn't for the word of God, if it wasn't for me knowing, I know Jehovah, know this God is true, I don't know where I'd be, how I would have gotten through this without Jesus and the Holy Spirit upon my life. I'm here to testify of that and try to help others. And the easiest way I can do that around everything I'm so busy doing is to make these videos and hope it reaches Donald Trump, the White House, and other people. King Charles. Make people pull out this book from their drawer, start thinking about what they're seeing, reading and seeking prayer and helping, because this is your temple, your personal space. What goes on here and in here. How you eat, what you eat, how you dress, your habits. So I'm going to go on to read chapter 3. By governing the tongue, we gain perfection. Heavenly wisdom is pure, peaceable, and full of mercy. My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. I'm reading chapter 3 not because of the stuff I just shared about the murders and the released prisoners and the people that should be killed for killing, life for a life. I'm reading chapter 3 because of the governments, because of the quick tongues and the stuff you're reading in Epic News and other places where we're getting all that propaganda and all that negativity. I can't talk. Propaganda and negativity. You shouldn't read too much of. But the quicker they are at the tongue, the less God can help. If they're too busy to act on their own merits, thinking they got it, they know what to do about it, without seeking God or seeking the counselor from God that can give the counsel. Like, I don't want to be called the prime minister if Donald were to meet me and shake my hand. Oh, she's the girl in charge of the country. It's obviously her house. She's the one that cares about the people and the land. I'm pretty good with saying what he said. I'm good on the joke where it's okay. You can just call me governor. I'm good with that because this country is small enough that we could have one united tax system, not have it interprovincial, and we could have one medical care system. We could have one set of Canada-wide ID, so we could help make it easier to single out criminals and do something about these crimes. But you don't start a website like Highway of Tears, for instance, put some interest into it for so many years, and then just call it quits, give up, show no more interest, and then let the website go, right? You have to keep caring. You just pass it down. You keep investigating, keep looking. The cases don't close. If they're not solved, they're still open. And so that's what happens here. I can't use my Highway of Tears t-shirts the way I've made them from years ago. I can't do anything with that website now because they've let it lapse and somebody else has bought it. Now, they still talk about the Highway of Tears, but it is not the same website it was that I got the picture from and all the information that was on there when I got it. And that's a problem. Some things shouldn't change. And the scriptures are proof of what will never change, the word of God and what his outcome is going to be for everyone. So this is just about be wary of politics and what people say. For many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, and able also to bridle the whole body. Behold, we put bits in the horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Behold, also the ships, which though they be so great, and are driven of fierce winds, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. Even so, the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature. And it is set on fire of hell. For every kind of beasts, and of birds, and of serpents, and of things in the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind. But the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. Therewith bless we God, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not so to be. Doth a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? Can the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries? Either a vine figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh? And that's what's happened with what Justin's allowed to happen in this country in the 10 years he's been in office. And that's what's going on, I guess, slowly over time also in the UK. You cannot have salt water and fresh water from the same fountain. Who is the wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him shew out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. But if ye have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, glory not and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. So we are at a point now where it's clear that change has been taken in our political world, in the world design, right? Even if that means literal change of design of the world with freaking earthquakes cracking up the platelets in the planet and we have to redo our continents, or redesigning money and becoming part of other countries and changing money in order to create a better system with countries that are years ahead in doing so. Now, I don't think I'm going to get through everything because I'm already past an hour, but I'm going to end on Hezekiah, the good king, in 2 Chronicles, which is where I'm at, which is what I read today, because I want to make a point here as I close. Hezekiah celebrates the Passover. Hezekiah sent word to all Judah and also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh, inviting them to come to the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover to the Lord, Jehovah, the God of Israel. The king and his officials and the whole assembly in Jerusalem decided to celebrate the Passover in the 2nd month. So he's trying to reach his son, who he named after the place also, called Manasseh, but he wasn't having it. They had not been able to celebrate it at the regular time because not enough priests had consecrated themselves and the people had not assembled in Jerusalem. God had specific consecration instructions. The plan seemed right, both to the king and to the whole assembly. They decided to send a proclamation throughout Israel from Beersheba to Dan, calling the people to come to Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover to Jehovah, the God of Israel. It had not been celebrated in large numbers according to what was written. At the king's command, couriers went throughout Israel and Judah with letters from the king and from his officials, which read, "People of Israel, return to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that he may return to you who are left, who have escaped from the hand of the kings of Assyria. Do not be like your fathers and brothers who were unfaithful to Jehovah, the God of their fathers, so that he made them an object of horror as you see. Do not be stiff-necked as your fathers were. Submit to Jehovah. Come to the sanctuary which he has consecrated forever. Serve Jehovah your God so that his fierce anger will turn away from you. If you return to the Lord, then your brothers and your children will be shown compassion by their captors and will come back to the land. For the Lord your God is gracious and compassionate. He will not turn his face from you if you return to him." So keep listening. This is very important. Dietary matters. What God is really like, what he really truly believes, what he says. The couriers went from town to town in Ephraim and Manasseh as far as Zebulun, but the people scorned and ridiculed them. Nevertheless, some men of Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun humbled themselves, so some went back and went to Jerusalem. Also in Judah, the hand of God was on the people to give them unity of mind to carry out what the king and his officials had ordered, following the word of the Lord. But even though Manasseh was the way he was and what he had done to turn people away, he still, Hezekiah, managed to get some people to say, okay, we're gonna go and participate in this. A very large crowd of people assembled in Jerusalem to celebrate the feast of unleavened bread, Aboriginal people and their bannock. Right in that time when this was happening, they were probably already over here, all over the place. There's no book about that. Eating bannock, living off of wild meat and drinking water. Maybe if they had goats, they'd have goat milk. But other than that, they are as pure as gold, which, by the way, is God's favorite color. So they started to celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread in the second month. They removed the altars in Jerusalem and cleared away the incense altars and threw them into the Kidron Valley. They slaughtered the Passover lamb on the 14th day of the second month. So this celebration that God used to do with us, this Passover, that was supposed to be in January on the 14th and end on the 21st, moved to February 14th. Today, we call that Valentine's Day. So that is marked right here in the Bible at this one Passover event with Hezekiah. There wasn't enough time. There wasn't enough consecrated priests to hold this Passover in January. So God said, okay, hold it in the second month on the exact same day. That is now Valentine's Day. See, God is good. Right? That's my heart. I have spent my whole entire adult life and I've never had a Valentine's. But why do I need a Valentine's when I got God and Jesus? I still write poetry that's romantic, so there's still always hope. And then there's my Charlie Brown story. So the priests and the Levites were ashamed and consecrated themselves and brought burnt offerings to the temple of the Lord. Then they took up their regular positions as prescribed in the law of Moses, the man of God. The priests sprinkled the blood handed to them by the Levites. Since many in the crowd had not consecrated themselves, the Levites had to kill the Passover lambs for all those who were not ceremonial clean and could not consecrate their lambs to the Lord. Although most of the many people who came from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun had not purified themselves, yet they ate the Passover contrary to what was written. Now, obviously, now at Easter time and Thanksgiving, we eat the food we make and celebrate together, and we don't need to consecrate ourselves in the same way. But we should still think about ways to do a tabernacle of feasts. However, Hezekiah prayed to Jehovah and said, "May the Lord who is good pardon everyone who sets his heart on seeking you, God, and God, the God of his fathers, even if he is not clean according to the rules of the sanctuary." And Jehovah heard Hezekiah and healed the people. The Israelites who were present in Jerusalem celebrated the Feast of Unleavened Bread for 7 days with great rejoicing. So from February 14th to the 21st, they ate meat. God eats meat. God's people eat meat. Christians eat meat. Athletes eat meat. We are allowed protein, cheese, dairy, milk, and eggs. Can't convert the unconvertible. Can't make what is right wrong when it's right in the book that God wrote for us to know the difference. God loved burnt offerings. He loved barbecues. He loved the smell of it. And it's there in the Bible over and over again. Just read it for yourself. But don't try to convert people that know what they're doing is right. After centuries of knowing it's right, thinking we're going to think, oh, you're right and we're wrong. You can't desensitize good people. From what we can see is obvious, the difference of night and day or turning the switch on and off. The Israelites who were present in Jerusalem celebrated the feast until the 21st of February, and then sang to the Lord every day, accompanied by the Lord's instruments. So they were playing like instruments made from David's day that had survived. Hezekiah spoke encouragingly to all the Levites who showed good understanding of the service of the Lord. For the 7 days they ate their assigned portion and offered fellowship, offerings, and praised the Lord, the God of their fathers, Jehovah. The whole assembly then agreed to celebrate the festival 7 more days. So they celebrated and ate food for 2 whole weeks, 14 days, 7 more days of meat. Another 7 days they celebrated joyfully. Hezekiah, king of Judah, provided 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep and goats for the assembly, and the officials provided them with 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep and goats. A great number of priests consecrated themselves. The entire assembly of Judah rejoiced, along with the priests and Levites and all who had assembled from Israel, including the aliens who had come from Israel and those who lived in Judah. There was great joy in Jerusalem, for since the days of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, there had been nothing like this in Jerusalem. The priests and the Levites stood to bless the people, and God heard them for their prayer, reaching heaven, his holy dwelling place. So there was peace for this Passover. Things were good. When all this had ended, the Israelites who were there went out to the towns of Judah, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. They destroyed the high places and the altars throughout Judah and Benjamin and in Ephraim and Manasseh. After they had destroyed all of them, the Israelites returned to their own towns and to their own property. So they did something right in returning to their service of Jehovah God. Now, in the Bible, see if I can close with something in my Facebook folder where I have all my scriptures. Now, in the 601st year, in the first month, on the first day of the month, the waters had drained from the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was drying. January 1st, in the 601st year, after the flood, is where the celebration of New Year's Day comes from. The flood was over, the waters were receding, and he was able to open up and look outside. They were on solid ground. God did this celebration in January with Moses when he was taking people out of Egypt, and the blood was over the doorpost to protect people, and they had to eat quickly because of what was coming. And the celebration of the Passover, because of that, before Jesus came to earth, was instituted on the 14th of January to the 21st of January. They did something at the beginning of January as well. And he said to continue this celebration forever. And so we do celebrate New Year's, but because nobody reads their Bible, nobody knows why we're celebrating New Year's anymore. It's because of the promise God made after the flood. So on the second month, they were finally out, the 27th of February, they were finally out of the ark with all of the animals. Noah built an altar to Jehovah and took some of all the clean animals and all of the clean flying creatures and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And Jehovah began to smell a pleasing aroma. So Jehovah said in his heart, "Never again will I curse the ground on man's account, for the inclination of the heart of man is bad from his youth up." Now, that's not true for all of us, but it's clearly true for the people I shared stories about today. "And never again will I strike down every living thing as I have done. From now on, the earth will never cease to have seed sowing and harvest, cold and heat, summer, winter, day and night." That's the reason we should be celebrating the holidays that we have, that are right to have and right to enjoy. So you know God loved the smell of well-cooked meat. It's in the Bible. People need to go back to reading this if they're going to have any answers on what to do now. So I'm going to leave it there. But the connection is that my birthday was January 18th. And God pinpointed my birth in the very week because it was part of the new world after the flood and the end of the system of things in the story of the Bible from the beginning to now. For the week of January 14th to January 21st. He actually pinpointed it to January 16th, which is the date of the celebration that is actually mentioned in the Bible, which is not relevant for me to share today. And I had marked it in my scripture that I was 2 days late. I was born on the 18th instead of the date predicted. My mom was caught walking around in the mountains in Prince Rupert. She was flown back to the hospital because she was trying to induce labor when I was born. So I'm going to keep talking about crime and these murdered people. I'm going to come back and share more about the names of the people that are dead. But don't vote liberal. And we need to look at what to do about sharing a new prison system where we can put life imprisoned people in prison for life and sentence people to death that should be sentenced to death. We need to reverse the legalization of marijuana, excluding the medicinal purposes. Same thing with LSD and all this other crap. It's all illegal. If there was any medicinal purposes in there, God could tell us what it is, and we wouldn't need to sell it in stores like it's going shopping for chips and pop. It's not. And to reverse all people making fentanyl everywhere. We don't need it. We have too many other options. We don't need to get high. We don't need to die on it. Like, they have pincushioned the heck out of me for the surgery that's coming up. And you have no idea how hard it is to have people pull so much money out of an arm that's had so much put in it. Living in this neighborhood. When I say, like, hey, you do realize I have more veins to choose from? Don't pick on the trigger arm. But they do, right? Because they know it's funny. And so the struggle is real. And so I'm angry. Because in my time out there, none of this death threat, none of this genocide, none of this stuff was anything like it is now. So we got to get together and help make it safer. And so I will continue to share the word of God, hope that it makes a difference, and keep doing my other videos, Bible one-on-one stuff, and sharing more upcoming crimes of things that are constantly going on. I'm going to send stuff here that I shared with all of you and try and get it to Donald at the White House so that we can avoid the tariffs, because I'm the lady that can help with all of that to solve the bantering of all the wicked tongues back and forth. We also need to work on the solution for no more pipelines, no more gas underground, creating the planet into a massive bomb. We don't need any more hydro dams. None of that. Oil, gas, a hydro dam, electricity, none of that's the answer to the future. Everybody's wrong. But you also can't charge money for what comes from God. So clearly, everybody has to slow down and reevaluate and get right in the picture. So I'm going to go now. Bye, guys. Keep tuning in for more stuff. And let's see what happens with Donald Trump, the White House, and the next month of the things I'm doing here and in the mail. My surgery, post-recovery. If the more we talk about crime, the more we're doing something productive to stop it. So peace out. Stay safe, stay warm, stay fed, and stay alive. Bye from Now TV Canada.